Oh, and also make sure we are in, Miss Linda, could you flip us into the speaker view? Merci buckets. Okay, hey everybody. Hello, how are you doing? I'm Kat Udero. Welcome to Third Eye Salon, where we're in each and every show we take a fresh look between the veils of reality. And today we are looking between the veils of channeling 3D or third dimensional ETs. And normally we hear about people channeling Pleiadians, Arcturians, all the usual suspects, and they're always fifth dimensional or higher. But these ETs that we're meeting today are third dimensional, and I just find that to be exceptionally exciting. So before we get into meeting our guests, let's first say hello to it's Linda Coulter Burge. How are you, Linda? I love you.
Hi everybody. I'm so happy. I love you too, Kat. I love everybody here. And I love that this is the background that I picked out before knowing anything about our guest. And I think it's fabulous. So I can't wait for you to meet her. I am Linda Coulter Burge. I'm a psychic and conscious business coach and life coach. And I'm here to be your live stream chat host. And as always, my policy is play nice or get out, because we're here to support each other. And if you're not willing to listen and you're always going to be right, there's not room for you in this group. We want you to be curious and live in curiosity. So let's support each other in the curiosity. And if you want to help each other, awesome, but be willing to listen as well. And please remember, if you like our shows, please hit the like, share, subscribe, hit that button and turn it black if you want to be notified when we go live. And thank you all for the coffees that you have been buying for us. I love that you appreciate what we do, and it helps us do some cool things that we can't even tell you about right now, but it's going to be awesome. So be sure to check out the links below in the description if you want to learn more about our beautiful guest. And let's see, what else? Oh, Facebook, my Facebook group. Thank you for showing up, and please join us if you're not a part of our Facebook group. We get to have additional conversations there and just share lots of support and love there. And like our event page so that you can share this and our future podcasts from the events, because our Facebook group is private. You can't share it from there, but you can share it from the event page. And so with that, I want to introduce Tracy Farquhar. Did I say that right, Tracy?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, wonderful. I'm very excited to have you as our guest, and Kat is going to tell everybody more about you. But I just, from my initial, my initial feelings, it's like, oh, this is going to be awesome. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It is a delight. It's our pleasure. So yeah, let us also meet our other happy co-host. It is Ms. Michelle Ambergy, the Awakener, the Araku, Cosmic Seashell, hanging out on our cosmic seashore. Michelle, how are you doing? Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of the Third Eye Salon party. I love this so much. And Tracy, welcome. We're so happy that you're here. And as always, I'm excited to be here, and let's play.
Absolutely. And supposedly Preston Dennett is showing up today. I don't know where he's at. I've not seen hide nor hair of Preston, but hopefully he will show up, and hopefully he's okay and there's nothing amiss, but we'll hold space for him. All right, so let's get into Tracy's bio and then we'll hop right into the combo. So unlike some practicing psychic mediums, Tracy Farquhar doesn't claim to have always been aware of her abilities. As a child, she was highly sensitive and labeled as shy because she avoided crowds and tended to be quite introverted. It wasn't until she began taking psychic development classes in 2005 that she discovered that her sensitivities were more than just shyness, and that she could tap into both spiritual and living energy to help guide others on their path. Continued study, practice, and passion has led her to full-time business offering readings, workshops, classes, and more. In her journey as a psychic medium, Tracy also discovered the ability to channel higher consciousness, which led to 2 published books, Frank Talk and Channeled Messages from Deep Space. Her 3rd book, Tarot for Today, is a unique deck of 78 tarot cards in book form, designed by using her own personal photos. So give us a thumbs up if you are excited to learn more about our new ET friends, Frank, and that you're excited to have Miss Tracy on the show. And I just want to know how they are helping us through this time of change, as they are 3D as opposed to 5D, and the dynamics of that. So let's hop in and talk to Miss Tracy. And I know that, Tracy, I wanted you also to talk about a little bit with you being sensitive, and that kind of being, you kind of being shamed for being sensitive, and then discovering that this was actually your superpower. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's a thing with a lot of our people that watch the show.
Yes, well, our culture doesn't really support sensitivities as much as I feel that they should. And so it was a little bit of a struggle, living as a highly sensitive person, especially as a child. Didn't have very good social skills, still don't. But I've learned to manage it, and so I manage it a lot better. I haven't changed who I am. It's just that I understand it better. I honor it more. And I don't feel the need to change myself to make other people comfortable like I used to. So because I understand it, and I understand that it's a gift, and I understand that it can be used as a gift, it makes me more comfortable with myself. But it wasn't like that for a long time. I was sent to school psychologist in 6th grade because they wanted to see what was wrong with me. Didn't find anything wrong with me. I never had, large groups of friends. I never liked big parties and big social gatherings. I tended to stay by myself, even as a kid. I would stay in the nurse's office at recess time because I didn't like all the noise and the shoving and the big energy. But I can look back on that now with compassion, instead of looking back on it as there being something wrong with me. Because once I started to understand that I was feeling things more deeply, and that was actually something that could help me to help other people, then it became clear that it was something that I could use as a gift, and for myself as well. So, we tend to be told as children, don't cry, don't show your emotions, put your big girl panties on and deal with it. And then as we become adults, that's emphasized even more, and I think for all genders, as women in my generation, we were taught to be more like men in the business world. I worked in the business world for a long time. Was told we shouldn't cry at work. You should dress like a man, dress like the job you want, all of that stuff, the corporate world. And again, that just throughout my adult years as well, getting that kind of side glance, like what's wrong with her? Is she stuck up? Is she cold? Is she, whatever other label you want to put on somebody who's mainly pretty quiet and introverted. So, and in middle school, the kids would line up on either side of the hallway as I walked down and chant freak, freak, freak. Wow. So these were the things, we all go through things like that. Some people more than others. I now fly my freak flag, pretty high. But it's still, there's still, because I'm a sensitive person, criticism still hits me. It still hurts. Those memories do have a little sting, but not as much as they used to. And it's just as well, because being a published author of kind of controversial ideas, I had to learn how to deal with that criticism as well. So, it has its ups and downs, being highly sensitive. But I've learned, again, to manage it. I've learned to use it to my advantage as much as possible. And I've also learned to honor the times where I don't have the energy and I don't have the strength to deal with the big wide world, and to when I need to pull back and disengage and nurture myself. So I think it's important to honor that part of the equation as well.
I want to honor your vulnerability in, sharing that, because I think oh my God, I was picked on and teased as well. I think, probably a lot of us were, but I've never had people in chorus call me freak. So I just want to say, how many of those people that were calling you names, how many of them have, 3 published books? And, so many, many, many. And then, and the other thing I want to say is that, like, your calm energy, like, it's like Linda's kind of the calm energy on the show, because I'm like hyperkinetic for sure. And Michelle's kind of more like, I'm like with me, like we're both kind of like bubbly and can be overflowing. But we had somebody comment on the last show. They were like, oh, thank God there's at least one calm person on the show. No judgment. No judgment taken. But but I mean, I think people really value the fact that there are people who now savor your calm energy. It helps them go into a calm state. So I say hats on to you being exactly the way you are, because it's a gift, and we are very happy to have that gift on our show.
Thank you.
So absolutely. So I wanted to talk about obviously getting into Frank and how you met Frank. And I know that this was a kind of sort of a long initiation, in that you started taking classes in 2005, and that this sort of just developed organically over time for you. And you talked about this in other interviews, but if you kind of want to get people who are new to you, maybe first time on this show, if you want to kind of just bullet point it for people, your introduction to Frank and how that went.
Well, I had been practicing as a psychic medium for a number of years. As you mentioned, I started taking those classes in 2005. Very soon into those classes, I found that I had some abilities that were, worth exploring. And so I took that class over and over again. It continued my studies, to continue my practice, started doing readings outside of the class. I was actually an administrative assistant at an arts college at the time. And so it was nice to be around very open-minded, creative people. So I would do readings for the students sometimes. So that was my way of practicing. And the professors were very supportive of that. So, I just kept practicing, started to do it as a business, as a side business. And I come from a family that's very open-minded to these things. So I grew up with that in my background, and have a sister who was a practicing psychic at one time. She happened to be visiting at Christmas one year, and we had a series of strange events, and we were pretty used to those things happening in our family, but it was clear that something or someone was trying to contact us. It just felt like we got these multiple taps on the shoulder in different ways. And so we decided to try to find out what that was. And when I was growing up, my sister used the Ouija board a lot and got an amazing array of messages that way. And I know some people have very negative connotation of what a Ouija board is. Mm-hmm. But it was used in a very positive way when I was growing up. And so that's what we decided to do. We didn't have one, so we made one. We grabbed a piece of cardboard out of the basement and wrote the letters and numbers on it, made a little cardboard planchette, sat down with it. And, we didn't get much in the beginning, but after a few minutes, it spelled out Frank. And neither of us had anyone with that name in our background, in our family. We had no idea who this was. So after a little while conversing with this energy, we got the impression that it was someone who was going to want to converse more. And they let me know that they wanted me to switch over to automatic writing to continue the conversation, which I had never done before, didn't really fully understand. Had only tried channeling once before and didn't have much success with it. But I was open and willing because the energy felt very good. It felt very positive and uplifting. And we were curious. So later that evening, they had given instructions about sitting at dusk with a candle in a relaxed state of mind with a pad and a pen and just, seeing what came through. So I was thinking, well, this will be interesting. Is my hand just going to write on its own,
Right.
with no sense of intention? But what happened was, as I sat there, I started to get a word and I'd write it down. I'd get another word and I'd write it down. And so it was like, oh, I can take dictation. I've been a secretary most of my life. I have experience in this. So it felt natural and normal. But it was an unusual way of writing because it wasn't like I had a thought and then I was thinking about how to say it. I was taking somebody else's thought and just writing it down and didn't really know if it was making sense until I looked at it and there was a sentence that made sense. So it was much different than I thought it would be. It was much easier than I thought it would be. But it did seem to take a lot of energy, and they seemed to recognize that because they would say, take a break after just a few minutes. Because it does put you in a whole different energetic realm to do channeling. And in the beginning, it was very draining for me. It isn't anymore as much. But it's still, to me, what I believe happens is that with my intention to channel, I think intention is the driving force of all of these experiences, I automatically raise my frequency to the highest point that I can attain. And holding that requires a lot of energy. So that kind of leaving that channel open for them to kind of just, converse through an energetic frequency that's just automatically translated through my gray matter. It does take a different kind of energy than we're used to using in our everyday life. So that was the first conversation, and I continued to do some channeling here and there. Was getting some really uplifting things, both kind of globally and personally from them. And I did ask them early on if they wanted to write a book, because it did seem like there were some really important messages there. And they said, not at this time. So I actually put it aside for a couple of years and didn't channel anymore until I started to get that nudge again. And there's an actual physical feeling that I get when they're around. It's an actual physical pressure on my right arm. And that's when I can tell they've got something to say. So I started the channeling again, but this time I used the laptop because there were times with the handwriting that I couldn't read it. So the laptop is much easier because I can type with my eyes closed. So that time, that's when they said, okay, now we're ready to start writing the book. And that was the first book, which is Frank Talk. Okay.
Yeah.
So that book was written entirely with me sitting up in bed at night, right before I was to go to sleep, with a laptop, and just as long as I could stay awake, I was typing whatever I was getting, and wouldn't read it over, because at one point, I would have to close the laptop and go to sleep. So sometimes it would be a day or two before I actually looked back on it. But whenever we would start again, they picked up exactly where we left off. It was a pretty amazing experience.
Wow. I want to make sure, Michelle or Linda, do you want to pop in first? Because I know where I want to go.
Well, I'll do real quick. I just want to reflect back that feeling of my mom, I think, saved me a lot in school and told me that I had to stop doing what I was doing or I was going to be picked on. People were going to think I was crazy. And so I can absolutely relate, but that message stayed with me. It was Kat who finally broke through to me that it's okay, that this is actually more normal than not. It's just that people suppress it. And so I just want to, there's a lot of people who are saying, me too, Tracy. Thanks for saying it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons I teach psychic development now is because I know how important that message is.
Wow, and that's great for people to know that you teach psychic development, because I think the way that it happened for you with being able to sit there, it's so gentle, because I was the same way, where I was like, okay, do I sit here, someone takes over my hand? Because you hear all these different stories, and the way that you present it is so much more accessible and so much more gentle. Seashell, did you want to hop in and say something?
Well, I have a question
Mhm.
because this is really cool. I'm loving how there's all these multiple dimensions. And you were talking about that Frank is third dimensional. And yet when you're communicating, it sounds like you're moving out of the third dimension, which is really cool. So you guys are working in all these different dimensions. Am I understanding that right?
I guess so. I have, I don't really think about it that way because it's very similar to the other work that I do, which I guess if you describe it that way, then it's all outside of the third dimension, because it's when I'm doing a psychic reading, I'm connecting with that person's consciousness through my consciousness. So it's not it's not a physical connection. It's not a sensory connection. It's a higher connection. So if you're describing that as outside of the third dimension, then it is. And as the same with mediumship reading, when I'm connecting to a non-physical being, I'm also connecting with my higher consciousness and their higher consciousness, their energetic being, and so it's really not that different, except that it's a more direct connection. So with a psychic or mediumship reading, I'm having to consciously translate the information that I'm getting. If I get an image, I have to describe it. If I get a feeling, I have to put it into words. This is an automatic translation, which Frank has described it as they're giving me a frequency of energy. They're communicating, which is really just the same as words, right? And sounds are frequencies. This is just an energetic frequency that my brain is automatically translating into English, because that's the language I use. And they described it that way because somebody in an audience once asked, do they speak other languages? And they said, we don't speak English. We speak frequency. And so my brain is still involved in that, because, if I spoke Portuguese, it would be coming out in Portuguese. And it's also going to be limited to my vocabulary that's already in my file cabinet in there. So yes, I think the short answer is yes, it's all beyond third dimension, but they have described themselves as living beings in another part of the universe, which is, I think, 3.8 billion light years away or something. 3.8 billion light years away. Yeah. Something like that number, 3.6 or 3.8. I can't remember. I didn't even know if that was possible. I had to look up, how big is the universe? I'm Googling how big is the universe. So that's actually known as deep space in scientific realm.
Wow.
That's why the second book was called what it was. So, but they are living beings. They're physical beings living on a planet, and they have found a way to project their consciousness, which to me is kind of like a telepathic connection, or kind of a remote viewing type connection. I think all of those things are in the same realm of consciousness projection, but they have discovered that they're not bound by time and space with that.
Right.
So they're still living their lives, but a part of their multidimensional consciousness is communicating with me and others here and other places as well.
Wow. What a beautiful way to describe it. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. That was awesome.
Thanks.
And what I love about this is that they are third dimensional beings who are operating in their multidimensional selves, which is what we are graduating and opening up to. And one of the things they're doing is saying, we've done it, and so can you, know, and the fact that they have been able to do this, literally transcending light years, because time space is an illusion, right? And in your multidimensional self, that's an illusion. So if you access it there, 3 billion light years. What was it, Tracy?
3.8 billion light years away.
God, the mind boggles.
Amazing.
So I can't wrap my head around it. So I wanted to ask you, because when you and I did our pre-show chat last week, I got to meet them psychically. Actually, they really did come in. which was unanticipated, but because I'm a psychic empath, one of the things that I do when I talk with people is like I start to tune into their vibe, and I start to tune into the people that they're talking to, usually, not always, but usually. And they came through really fast and really clear. And it was like this boom around my head. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, oh, they're here. And you've had experiences, Tracy, with them like knocking people out of their chairs when they've come into a room. And I just want you to talk about that a little bit, because they are new in terms of this. Relatively speaking, this is a new ability that they've acquired in their own attempt to save their planet. Tracy and I were talking about this. Like they were like, well, we've done everything we could do, but we've not explored consciousness. We've not explored spirituality. In the last ditch attempt to save their planet, they did it. They explored this. It's what they needed to do, and then they extended themselves out into this vast universe to help others with the same. And I just want to know, like, did they blow your head off the first time you met them, or was it very gradual? What's other people's experiences with their energy? Because it's very specific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do have a very specific energy, and and so in the beginning with I believe the reason that it started with the automatic writing was because that was a much gentler connection. So the writing is gentler. The verbal channeling requires even more energy on my part, and I think on their part as well. So, we kind of eased into it with the writing, and then took a break from each other for a while. We came back to the writing. It flowed much more easily. And they let me know that they had been perfecting this connection in that time where there was a lull. And they continued to do that. And I would feel different every time I connected with them. So the first time I decided to practice the verbal channeling, they encouraged this connection. And so I gathered up a bunch of people who had been students of mine, who really understood what I wanted to achieve here and wanted to support it. I really felt that I needed a support group around me. I didn't feel scared, but I wanted the energetic support of, people who understood. So we gathered in someone's house. I sat in a comfortable chair and just had an intention to let them in. And I felt very clearly my consciousness shift to the left. I could just really feel myself kind of shift over here and kind of perch there. And I felt them coming in through the right. And since then, it's always been that way. They come in through the right. And I think that's why I get that pressure on my right arm. And I'm over here very conscious and aware, but not involved. So I'm observing, and I know that I could stop it at any time if it felt uncomfortable, if I wanted to. But I'm more of an observer, and I'm very aware of what's going on. So that was another thing I wasn't sure of, if I would leave the building, and I thought that trance channeling was that all the time, where the trance the consciousness was almost unconsciousness, but it's not that for me at all. And I know some people do totally leave and don't have any memory of it. I don't have much memory of it, but that memory can be jogged. If somebody says, do you remember when Frank said this? I'll say, oh, right. I kind of get that. I remember that a little bit. But normally that will fade pretty quickly, because it's not coming in through my normal waking conscious thought. So yeah, it was a gentle introduction to them, but throughout, like I said, throughout the times that I have done the verbal channeling, especially with groups, it has changed. And there was one time where I was doing a large group at a conference, and for some reason, I don't know why, we had all kinds of strange things going on in the room. Now, they had used that room all day for breakout sessions in this conference. And as soon as we all came in for this session, the lights were flickering, there was static in the mic, kind of things that you would expect in like a haunting experience, right? Like, what is going on here, But it was just this sense of energy buildup. And I had two friends at the front door ushering people in. And so they were sitting up against the back wall. And so when I get into the place where Frank was coming in, I felt them come in like, it was this big whoosh of energy. And those friends in the back felt like they got hit by an air cannon. They just felt themselves get pushed up against the wall. And it was startling to them. They didn't get hurt or anything, but it was startling. And they told me later that at least one person got up and left because the energy was so intense when they came in.
Mhm.
That hasn't happened since then. I never really asked them what that was all about, but normally it's a much gentler transition, although when there are sensitive people in the audience, they can sometimes feel a little uncomfortable because it's an unusual energy. They're not from around
Right.
here. So, it is a foreign feeling energy, and it can be very high frequency when I'm verbally channeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say from my experience with connecting with you and then connecting with Frank, it was very high, and it was this very specific tone, like in and around my head. And my guess is that they were so excited to do a live channeling that they're like, "Let's go, everybody!" And they hopped in, and there was like whoosh, and I just, it was really cool to be able to connect with them. And that's one of the things you said, is that they are open to connecting with people who want to connect with them. And I was like psychically seeing like these like threads of light going out, and like as a kind of like a search, like these what's a good way of saying it? These scout lights going out, flying out to like find people and to find situations that they're, using that to research and to locate. And I was standing in the kitchen after we got done talking, and I was still feeling that connection. And I felt this space in my head like move over, like there was a space made, and I heard excellent. And I was like, oh, he's available too. So I just want to say that they feel so good. So don't let that frequency, it is unusual. It's different. It is alien, as we'd say, but there's so much love beneath it. So I just want to vouch for that.
Absolutely. That's why they come here, because they admire us, and they always say so, how much they love and admire us and love our planet, and how incredibly diverse it is, and how it's so worth saving.
Tracy, you had mentioned their planet in one of your interviews. Do you think that their planet before they went into crisis was similar to ours, and now they're living in the post consequences of coming to the brink and bringing it back?
I don't get that it was similar to ours. I think they're astounded by our planet. I just always get that sense that they're just astounded by the beauty and the diversity and the richness and the lushness of our nature. But I do think their planet was better at some point. What they have described to me is that there are elements in their the closeness of their suns. So evidently they have two stars that they see as suns, and they're very close to the planet. So a lot of the sparseness of their planet is because of that, and not necessarily what they did to the planet, although that also damaged it. So yes, I think it's both. What they have described to me is that they mostly live underground, and I think it's always been that way. But I do think that there was the ability to use the surface of the planet more before they damaged it themselves. Okay, so there are certain times of their solar year where the star is far enough away that they are able to come to the surface, and evidently it's a time of celebration, and and they party when that happens, because they talk about how they have their own form of music and entertainment, and so there's that sense that that's a celebration time for them before they have to go back underground. But it does feel like one of their biggest challenges is food production, because it's difficult enough to grow anything on that planet And it's even more difficult since they've damaged the planet. So whenever they speak about it, I can get a visual while they're speaking if I'm doing a verbal channeling. And I can see these kind of mounds where it's an underground entrance to, their dwellings. And it feels to me that, there are very short periods of time where they're able to actually grow anything on the surface, that a lot of what they grow as food is done underground as well.
Can you show us, because I want to clarify for people that Frank is also 8 beings of this planet. There's 8 beings. They're very scientific. They're exceedingly scientific planet, but they're not bipedal. And if you would show us a picture of your book, so people who aren't familiar with your work, what they look like, because it's a bit shocking.
So they only showed themselves to me once, very briefly, in a meditation. I was in a situation where I was in a very deep meditation. Actually, it was a Joe Dispenza meditation. And I kind of felt that going into that something was going to happen with Frank. And so in this meditation, I got a brief glimpse, very brief glimpse of what they looked like. It was a little shocking, not scary, but just shocking. A few days after that, I was at a psychic event, like a fair type event, and a friend of mine who was an intuitive artist had her paintings displayed. And I went to look, and this painting was one of the ones that was displayed, and it's almost exactly what I had seen. And to the degree that I really thought I was going to pass out, because it was just so, the colors, the face and the head, not so much. I didn't see that very clearly. I didn't see hair like that, but I saw this kind of dorsal fin type thing. And I got this kind of sense of almost snail-like.
Yep.
I still don't have a really clear sense of the size of them. I don't feel they're as big as us, but I don't also feel like they're the size of a snail, like in our, in our world. But this was an astounding thing. And then when I spoke to this artist, she said, "Oh yeah, I knew I was channeling that when I painted that." So I bought the painting and made sure it was on the cover of the book. Just felt like I had to. But that's the only time I've really gotten a glimpse of them. I also once got a sense of their language, which was also really interesting. A lot of clicks and guttural back of the throat sounds. And so when in the second book is Channeled Messages from Deep Space. This is more of a question and answer book with Mike Dooley, who is a Hay House author, and he teaches a course called Infinite Possibilities. So when we were doing that book, he wanted to know the name of the planet that they came from. And I said, well, that's going to be challenging because there's not going to be an English word for that, right? So they're going to have to tell me that in their language. And I already knew that I had heard in my head that kind of guttural sounding, and I knew it was going to be difficult to translate that. And it was. It took me a couple hours of asking them to repeat it over and over again. And I would type it out as an English word, and then I'd Google it to make sure it wasn't some bad word in another language or something, because it does kind of sound like something from a Russian language or something like that. But what I heard was this kind of, and it was a very guttural.
Sounds like Klingon.
Yeah. So when I finally got something that sounded, it's Brohashka is the way that I translated that into a word. And it is not a dirty word in Russian. I looked it up. So, but that, so yeah, they're, they've given me little glimpses here and there of who they are and what they're about. But they really have let me know that they don't want to make their presence here are all about them. You know, when Mike Dooley and I talked about writing this book, his first idea was to make it about them and who they are, what their planet's like, and all their story. And I got a big no. Like, that's not what we came here for. You know, we're happy to tell you a little about ourselves, but this is about you and how we want to support you. Because otherwise it's just kind of, it's just kind of capitalizing on the alien aspect of them. Which is, you know, of course, we're going to be curious about that. But they didn't want us to make it all about that, you know?
Yeah, because that is going to be where people go. I mean, that's where I go, where it's like, I want to know what they look like. I want to know what their homes look like. I want to know all of that immediately. And it would be really easy to get sidetracked and for people to add that to their UFO religion, which is, I'm sure, the opposite of what they don't want to, or the opposite of what they want to do. We did have somebody ask if you could channel Frank for us, but I know that that's kind of like up to them and where your energy level is. So we can check into that at the end of the show, but we're not going to promise that to anybody because that's sort of an agreement that you know, we have no control over that. Did you want to pop in, Miss Linda? Do you have a question? Or are you okay?
I just, again, I've never had anyone explain the process of going into channeling and the shift of consciousness to the left. You described exactly what happens to me when my clients are the ones that said, you know, you really need to tell people when you're doing that weird thing that you do. I didn't even know I was doing it, but I literally felt like I was shifting to the left, and I listen and it comes from the right, and it's like two phases of me, or me and something else. And I'm conscious of it, but I don't usually remember what they've said. Like, I record all of my sessions with people because I don't remember. And they'll ask me about it. It's like, I don't know, go back and look at the session. So it was just really cool to hear that first experience and how you brought people in that supported you, that had the same intent, and that it happened with your intent, and that shift that took place. It was just like, oh, I've never had someone explain what I have done. It's like I've just kind of felt like I'm out here floundering sometimes of, well, this is different, until I finally accepted it. So thank you. I think that was
you're
really
welcome.
helpful for people watching.
You're welcome. I mean, I do feel like everything I do has kind of come together. So there are times in a psychic reading where I know that I'm channeling, you know, and I'm off in a different place. It's not quite the same as when I channel Frank, and I don't know specifically who I'm channeling. But it all, you know, even though we delineate these aspects of our abilities, and for me, psychic reading is different from a mediumship reading. Mediumship reading is different from channeling. They all kind of work together because, again, it's a shift of consciousness. It's a raising of the vibrational frequency of our consciousness to connect with it, you know, that kind of consciousness, either with a person, a non-physical being, and it puts us into a different realm, you know. And so I think in all the work I do, I kind of shift over, and it's very purposeful and deliberate that I don't remember a lot of what I do. You know, I don't need to. It's coming from a different part of my consciousness, even when I'm not channeling. So, you know, since it's not a thought, it's not being deposited in the memory bank. That's how I look at it. You know, if it's a thought that's coming from my brain, it goes into that memory bank. Sometimes, not all the time, but it's coming from outside of me and through my consciousness, but it's not the same as a thought. And so again, most of the time I don't remember things, you know. And as you said, Linda, somebody comes back and says, remember when you said this? And I'll say, no, but okay. All right. You know, if you say so. And sometimes there will be a little vague memory there. But I don't want to carry that all around with me all the time. So it's deliberate. I want to be the observer. I want to be in that observer's perch, especially as an empath, especially as a highly sensitive person. If I were carrying all of that, and it's a lot of emotional weight in these readings, all the things that I do, I wouldn't be able to do it. Absolutely not. So it has to move through me and out. And that's what allows me to keep doing it.
It's right. When you just said that, right before you said it, I heard it's not for you to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And when I teach psychic development, I teach that sense of being in an observer's perch, not just in a reading situation, but in life in general, as much as we can. It is a certain amount of compassionate detachment where we can be compassionate, loving beings and expand that out and to help people. But then, I see a reading as handing somebody a gift and then saying, okay, now you get to do with it whatever you want. And I'm done with it now. So that, again, that's all the work that I do is with that intention. That does not mean that it doesn't ever affect me, but it affects me less than it would otherwise.
Yeah, we can't emotionally caretake people that we're supporting. We are the vessels, we're the channels, but we can't be the caretakers because that would crush us at a certain point. Well, I wanted to talk about like what Frank is offering because I know that they're very scientifically oriented, and I love that they're using what we call telepathy or channeling as a way to give this scientific information so that we can make better choices for ourselves. And I wanted to know, is the second book Channeled Messages from Deep Space? Is that Mm-hmm. So is that about the technology part of it, or what are they giving us in the second book?
Well, it's all question and answer. So, and it's divided up into different sections, different areas of questioning. So each chapter deals with a different aspect of, starting with their life. So the first chapter does deal with them and has more information about them, and for those who are curious about them. And then it goes on to talking about us and our life on Earth. What kind of advice they have for us, how they feel about different things that we're curious about. Here's a question: how much more can we aspire to in terms of spiritual evolution? So, these are pretty deep questions from Mike Dooley. Sometimes they're very deep answers. Sometimes the answers seem kind of simple. And sometimes they say, we don't know. There are times where they just don't have an answer. And then they go into the greater universe. And so they talk about other planets and other things going on out there, other energetic aspects of ourselves, and then building a better world. Okay, so now what do you, here's a question: how can we avoid disasters? It's one of the questions, so it's, it's far reaching, but and then the last chapter is asking better questions, which is interesting because they're like, Mike Dooley said, so what kinds of questions would you like us to ask you? So that was pretty interesting experiment there. So yeah, I mean, they talk about what worked for them and how they had to learn about the power of compassion and the power of intention and looking beyond the constraints of the typical scientific method, which is so similar to what we have going on here, and understanding that that's restrictive. And then in order to expand out of that, we have to go into the realm of consciousness. We have to go into the realm of spirituality. You can't avoid that if you want to kind of break free from that constraint of the scientific method. And, we can see that now when we look at quantum physics and the things that are being discovered there that are beyond the typical scientific method. We can see that scientists who are interested in exploring consciousness and psychic abilities and are being ridiculed for it by others in the scientific community. But I think we can see that shift occurring, taking what they know and expanding it, which is what science is all about anyway. So I think it's a natural progression, and it is going to happen for us eventually, and it is starting to. And they're just kind of supporting us in that and wanting us to keep our minds open and to be curious. And Linda, you used that word in the very beginning, and I love that you use that word. It's one of my favorite words. It's just, we need to be curious and be open to what else is out there beyond what we have imagined and what we have been taught to believe. And that's really what they're all about. They're also very, very supportive of the ideas about how what we think creates our reality, which is why Mike Dooley was so interested in them, because that's what he teaches, this idea of thoughts becoming things. And so they discuss that a lot, how our intentions and our beliefs create what we experience. And so if we want to change the experience, we need to change the way we're thinking. And that is a difficult thing to do for, and clearly any living being, because they have this issue, right?
Yeah, I find that time and again where it's always about own that you're the creator, own it, understand it, and then get into it. Do they do any downloads about tech stuff then? Because I know that since they're very tech oriented, are they giving people downloads about like how to create better technology? Like what do they do with tech and downloads?
I think so. I haven't really asked them that question. I don't think that question came up, but
okay.
They did talk about in the Channeled Messages from Deep Space book. They did mention that there are other methods of generating, like generating power for us, generating energy. And some of the methods that they suggested, they gave a list, they not just, they of course talked about wind power, but also the power of the sea, the waves, the power of gravity, power of crystals. And in the years since that book was published, I have come across articles where there are people working on these things, and it made me so excited. I even saw somebody in someplace in Africa had created this light that works with gravity. So they had some means of powering this light source with gravity, and it was exactly what Frank had talked about. So it's very exciting to see that some of the things they have talked about are actually things that somebody out there is working on. So maybe they did download it. I don't know.
Yeah, since they're out there reaching out. Miss Linda?
So I do have a question for you or for them. Are they providing this information to people, or when they provide this information to people, are the people necessarily aware that that's what they're receiving, or is it just an idea that's coming to them?
Yeah, I think it would depend on how open that person is to this kind of stuff. I think for the most part, it would seem like an idea, and I think that that's something that's been happening for a long time with us. We just as humans in our everyday lives, we get downloads all the time from our higher selves, our guides, our loved ones in spirit, our angels, and all of the ascended masters, and all of those beings that are on our team helping us. We get them all the time, but they come through as that intuitive hit, that little spark of an idea, that little download that you get in the shower, and we don't recognize it as coming from outside of ourselves. We just think, oh, I just had this epiphany. I just had this great idea. And it's, again, one of the other reasons that I teach psychic development is because I would like to teach people to trust that more, because it's so valuable. That intuitive voice sounds and feels like our own voice, but it can be the voice of our guides. It can be the voice of our higher selves that is always wanting to support and guide us into our highest state of being. So it's important that we listen to it and give it some credence. It's it's not just a whim or, you know, just my imagination, as people will say. If we trust it, we can avoid a lot of issues in our lives. We can learn to learn through the things that we live through, and we can learn to better our world as a collective. And again, I think this is part of the shift that's happening as well.
Absolutely. Hop in, Seashell. Do you have a question? I'm sorry, Linda.
Oh, no, real quick, and then definitely Michelle come in. I keep hearing Nikola Tesla. I'm curious how long they've been doing this and if they could possibly be who he was contacting.
Oh my God, that's a great question. How long have they been doing this? Oh my God, love that question.
I don't know for sure, and I don't know. That's not a question that's come up, so I can't answer that. But I do feel them very strongly around. So if they want to come through, you know, we'll see if I can do that for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hang on to that question, Linda. We definitely want to ask that. Oh, that's okay. And so go ahead, Seashell, hop in. Oh, you're muted, love.
Whoops, sorry about that. I always forget to turn my mic on. You know, it's interesting as we're sitting here talking, I'm actually doing this artwork that's coming through. And it was funny when you were talking about science, they were saying science is artistic Nikola Tesla. So Linda, I was like, you beat me to it, man.
Oh my God.
Yeah, ooh, I'm getting total
it was
chills.
just over and over again. I just kept hearing his name over and over again.
So there must be some kind of connection there, which is beautiful. Yeah. Have you heard anything about that or anything that supports that, Tracy?
That name has not come up, Nikola Tesla, in that I can remember, and not in the book at all. But it does make sense. And, you know, again, because he was a really kind of forward-thinking individual. I mean, I think Einstein was as well. You know, I think that they were kind of pioneers in that idea that science wasn't just a physical thing. Yeah. And that, you know, we need to really expand on those parts of what they were studying and putting out there, which I think is one of the things that our scientific community now is kind of, you know, has turned away from. They don't, you know, they don't really understand consciousness. So it's hard to know what to do with that. You know, the experiments that were done in the 60s and 70s and on ESP, you know, they aren't seen as scientific enough, although they had incredible results that said there's something else going on here other than chance. You know, none of the scientific community really takes that seriously. But again, that is starting to change. And you cannot keep ignoring these things, you know. And not only can you not ignore them because they exist, but you can't ignore them because there's something in that for us to learn that is going to also expand our understanding of how things work and how we can make things better. You know, so we need to be willing to go there. And that's what Frank talks about a lot, both individually in our own lives. We want to be able to be curious and open up to the things that we resist and understand that when we resist things, it's because we've been programmed to not believe them. You know?
We do have questions coming in for Frank. Do you feel comfortable moving into Frank mode?
Let's see. It will take a minute if you don't mind, like a minute of
meditation, everybody. Yep, that's all good.
Dead air.
Maybe you can post that in the chat, Linda, for people who are coming in, that we are going to go into a meditative state so they know why.
Yes, yes, we are here and happy to be with you here today. We are quite excited to connect with you and address any of questions that you have, as it is quite a transformational time for each of you in your own individual experience in this incarnation, and also as a collective. And this is what we have come to do, and so we are quite excited to address your questions if you would like to pose them to us at this time.
Thank you, Frank. I'm really honored that you're coming through. Thank you so much. So we have a question from the audience about, if I can get my screen to work here. What can we do to help heal the pandemic crisis as it's starting to divide people? My screen keeps jumping, I apologize. Linda, can you give that question?
Sure. What can we do to help heal the health crisis as it's starting to divide people deeply over the poke debate? We're using speak here, using YouTube speak.
Does that make sense when we
Does
say
that
that?
make sense to Frank? I can say it.
Can you repeat the last part of that again, please?
The whether or not to get a shot.
Well, that's not the question. So the question
okay,
is,
I'll read it exactly as what can we do to help heal the COVID crisis as it's starting to divide people deeply over the vaccine debate?
It is important to understand that the division comes through fear, and fear is a natural response to the unknown. It is a natural response of any living being. It is ingrained into your consciousness, into your thoughts, into your brain, to have fear when something is seeming to be a threat. And yet that fear is not always a logical response to something which is unknown. The logical response that is capable of creating change is the response of curiosity and wonder and awe in the ways that the solutions to these problems arise. The solutions to these problems arise through the scientific community, through the ingenious efforts of those who wish to create change. And some of those methods may be difficult for the layman to understand. So it is typical and logical in some ways to respond to that with skepticism. And that skepticism is not necessarily a negative thing to have, but it is essential to each of you that you judge your decisions based on your sense of compassion, your sense of intuitive knowledge, your sense of what is feeling right to you as an individual, despite what you are being told, despite what others are forcing upon you, despite what you are exposing yourself to in the general arena. It is important that this time encourages you to have your own sense of truth. And if it is not based in compassion, if it is not based in wanting the best for the greater good, it is not the truth. If it is feeling like it is this form of self-defense, it is not the truth. And so using the discernment of the inner knowledge, the heart knowledge, the compassion knowledge, the intuitive sense of what is right, is what each of you is being challenged to do at this time. And there will be those who will resist that because they do not understand it. There will be those who will resist anything that they do not understand and will not be willing to go there. And this is what creates the division. Those who are willing to be open and curious and go beyond their fears. And those who are not willing to do that and are not understanding what that means. Not understanding that their higher consciousness is giving them that information at any given moment. But they are resisting it. So it is important now that through this experience, you begin to understand how fear relates to your own personal experience of resistance and keeps you from expanding out from who you think you are.
That is great. Anything else you want to say on that? Or does that feel complete?
We are on your side, whatever side that may be. But what we want you to understand is that you are not an individual who's not connected to everyone else. In fact, there is an intrinsic connection between all of the humans on your planet and all of the other living beings in the largest sense of the universe. Everything that you say and do and think, and all of the actions that you put out into the world, the energy that you put out into the universe, has an effect on every other living being. And while you need to create a sense of oneness with yourself as the foundation, you are intrinsically connected in a form of oneness with all. And if you were to really embrace that idea, you would know what to do.
That's well said. We had a question earlier, Frank. How long have you been contacting Earth? And did you have any connection with Nikola Tesla?
We have not had a connection with Nikola Tesla, yet we are very familiar with his work and have a deep connection with the work that he has put out into your planet and the world in general. And this is a being of higher consciousness and continues to do this work. And you must understand that his work is not ended and stopped because his physical body is no longer present. He is continuing the work in many different realms, many different forms of consciousness. So it is something we are quite familiar with and we embrace wholly. And we see as a catalyst for large sense of learning and expanding the ideas that he began as the seed that was planted in the scientific community.
Yeah, I feel like he was an ET soul in a physical body, so it would be easy for him to bring that information through. Thank you. We have a question for you, Frank. What do you think about star seeds? We talk a lot about star seeds on this planet, and that souls coming in who are from other places. What do you see or experience that? How do you see or experience that?
There is a sense that some of you may more identify with that aspect of your being. Some of you will not. But the truth is that you are all multidimensional beings. None of you is simply what you see in the mirror. That your consciousness is multidimensional. And so there are other aspects of your being that are living in some way, in some dimensional form, that you do not understand at this point. And so there are aspects of you that could be living in a different dimensional space. There are aspects of you that could be living on another planet as a so-called ET. There are aspects of you that could be living multiple lives at the same time. And so in that way, you can see that you are all star seeds. You get to choose how to incarnate. And this is not the only choice that you have. You may choose to come back next time as a human being. You may choose not to come back. You may choose to come back as a being on another planet. And so that experience and the wisdom and the knowledge that you gain from that lifetime will remain with your soul and your spirit expression of that soul in some way. And so it is not such an unusual experience as you may think.
That's great. Thank you. We have a question that's kind of specific to a person. They ask, Frank, I am learning to use color and light therapy Is there something other than sound, music, color, and light used? Is there something other than sound, music, color, and light used together that would help me progress in this research?
The understanding of how those things work is based on the understanding of energy. There's all different expressions of energy. See, light energy, sound energy, and again, the light and sound energy has many different dimensional aspects to it. So it is not just the sound that you can physically hear with your ears that has an effect on you energetically. It is not just the light that your eyes are able to perceive that has an effect on you energetically. There's a wide range of experiences beyond the physical senses. See? And so it may be that you begin to become more aware of that which you cannot perceive with the 5 physical senses, and bring your higher awareness into the sense of color, the sense of light, rather than just what is being able to hit the cornea of your eye or the eardrum in your ear. See, energy goes far beyond what you are capable of experiencing in this realm, and yet the visual aspect and the sound aspect are very powerful indeed. But you can hear things that you cannot hear. You can see things that you cannot see. And this is where you start to expand into the realm of higher consciousness.
Frank, are you able to look into, thank you for that. Also, thank you for everything that you're giving. Are you able to see into our future in terms of our timeline that we're on? How do you experience that?
We do not pretend to be psychic. And yet there are clear trajectories that can give us a sense of where you are heading. And so there are future potentials, there are future possibilities. And there is something to be said for being able to have a sense of that as a higher form of awareness. It is important that you recognize that you all have that sense of the potential for yourself and for your planet and for your collective. And yet that is always changing. There's never something that is unchangeable. The way that you change that is in the way that you go about your life, and the way that you think, and the actions that you take. And so there is never just one way that things can turn out, is there? So it's not really in your benefit to know that, because it just becomes restrictive. And so if you leave yourself open to the possibilities, and you follow the path as a form of awareness and learning, you'll have a much richer life experience than if you have a singular goal in mind that you may or may not reach.
Okay, thank you. Linda, yeah?
I have a personal question for me. There are times where I go through 2-3 months of almost in my dreams, I dream of being shown, being taught on this, like a whiteboard almost, and I don't see the writing on it, but I'm exhausted in the morning because it's just been all night of being in class. Can they speak to that at all? Is that, I don't know who's teaching me. Could that possibly be Frank, or is that possibly someone else?
I understand that in the sleep state, you are experiencing multiple ways of being a conscious being. And so again, as a multi-dimensional being, you are now able to travel between the different aspects of yourself, the different expressions of yourself. And so this learning may be being done in another lifetime that you're experiencing elsewhere. This learning may be done from your higher self, your spirit self, learning from the experiences that you're having here. It may be that your guides are showing you different ways to look at what you are seeing and experiencing through the five sensory experience. In any case, this experience of being an incarnate being is always offering you the opportunity to learn and grow. Otherwise, you would not be here. Hey. And so it is in that sleep state, you are just more aware of that process of learning. You can request that you not be conscious of that. You does not have to be conscious of it in order for it to be a useful experience. Mm-hmm. And if it is disturbing your sleep, you can ask that stay in the deeper levels of consciousness instead of bringing you up into a more wakeful state, which is exhausting. There is that kind of experience is happening for most of you, most of the time. It's just something that is happening in the deeper levels of consciousness that you're not aware of. Learning is not just a thought. It is not just instructing the brain. It is enriching the soul. And so that is a constant opportunity for you in every realm of your being, whether it's the physical realm or the spiritual realm. And you can learn from different aspects of yourself. You can learn from different non-physical beings. You can learn from ETs. You can learn from the animals in your life. Yeah, there is nothing that doesn't offer you some sense of learning.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Michelle, do you have questions?
Well, I did, but I think she answered, or Frank answered it already, because I was wondering if Frank was related to human in any way, if there's a connection there, but we're all connected. And so that was already answered, because I was really curious. I know there's people that channel beings that are like our future selves, our star families, that kind of stuff, but Frank already answered it.
Beautiful. The connection is much more common, is much more natural than you tend to think. The sense that we are all connected, it goes beyond our differences, the physical differences, our thought differences, the ways that we express ourselves. Yeah, and yet we tend to focus on the differences. Even our civilization has done that. Yeah. The sense of foreignness to anything outside of your own realm, the realm of understanding. And yet, there is a real need to understand that we are all spirit, we're all soul, we're all energy. And it's just expressing itself in different ways. And that goes for every living being. Every living being that exists is an energetic form that is expressing itself in a certain way. And that way that it is being expressed will create a specific learning experience for that soul and offer it as a specific form of knowledge and wisdom that it will carry with it forever and ever, you see. And so you are choosing to incarnate at any given time in any given way for that specific intention of experience. Right. It is not different for any kind of living being.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions coming in, Linda? Not at the moment.
I think we have gotten all of the questions that our audience is asking so far.
Okay.
Of course, the ones for me are just rolling off faster than I can.
Well, go ahead, ask a question.
Put them into my consciousness to speak. Let me see if I can formulate this one. For people who want to connect, whether it be to Frank or some other, that want to expand their consciousness and be more effective in their practices to do that, does Frank have any advice?
The best advice that we can give is to be as present and aware as possible in every given moment. It is not a means of raising the consciousness, is not to distract yourself from your life or to feel that you need to ascend from this physical state. You have chosen this physical state as a part of your ascension. Ascension is a constant. The universe is in a constant state of expansion, which is what ascension is. Ascension is expansion. And so you can't help but ascend. It is your natural state. You are an aspect of the universe yourself. And so stop trying so hard. Be present. Enjoy the beauty of this world. Be appreciative. Find the connections that uplift you. Find the means of expressing your precious soul on this earth in the best way possible. Find the passions and the joys and the things that you feel drawn to do. You came here as an essential part of the whole, in a unique and in a way that is not able to be duplicated in any way at any time. And so thinking that you need to ascend from that state is negating the uniqueness of your being and the reason that you came here in the first place. And so making it your goal to reach a higher state is sometimes distracting you from reaching the state of simply being. Within the beingness is the higher state. Within the awareness is the ascension. Within the loving kindness that you give off into your realm, that is where you will find the ascension. The compassionate acts, the loving expression of yourself, the kindness that you express to your own being and others. This is where you will find the ascension. And yet there are so many people trying to ascend from this state to another. Your natural being is ascended. The spirit being, once it is released from this physical, is in a natural state of ascension. You don't have to try to get there. That's not why you came here. You came here to have this physical expression of your spiritual self, to see what you could do with it. So what are you doing with it? What are you doing with this life? This is what we would like to inspire you to ask yourself. And if you are not happy with what you are doing with it, then you must do something else.
That's beautiful. That was really well said. I wanted to ask you, Frank, in the process of your people healing and rescuing your planet from the damage that had been done, did you experience ETs reaching out to you to help you? Did you experience Pleiadians or Arcturians or any external resource of ETs reaching out to you?
If we did, we were not aware of it at that time. There was much chaos in our realm at that time, on our planet. And so all of our thought energy was being put into trying to save us. And so it is quite possible, and we understand now that it's quite probable that we were being helped, just as you all are. But we aren't necessarily aware of that as being an external source of wisdom. We can see that now. But since we're not able to go back and examine that, we can't say for sure who that was or where it was coming from. But we're quite certain that the understanding and awareness of that is what has encouraged us to do the same.
Thank you. I'm curious because you say that you're not psychic and yet you're able to reach out telepathically and communicate. So are you reaching out telepathically and communicating through technology? Or is this done through the collective of your minds?
When we say we're not psychic, there's a sense of not necessarily defining that word as a conscious connection. And of course, that's what we're doing. But in the more common definition of that word, the idea of a psychic being someone who is predicting the future, that's not what we do. And so in the more general sense of the psychic awareness, which is an expansion of consciousness, the conscious energy connection, then yes, of course, so every being has that ability. We label it as psychic because it's the only word that there is available, but that word is misused. And we would not want to put ourselves out there as predictors.
Yes, that makes absolute sense. Your mission is to help people come back into their power and make better choices. And are you finding, as you are threading your consciousness through the universe, are you finding other planets and other people that are coming into states of ascension or awakening, such as your planet went through and that we're going through right now?
We have, and we have also found those that have resisted that and not done so well. And so there are many different states of evolution among the beings in the universe, and each is of its own benefit. And even those who resist that sense of expansion, ascension, as you call it, they do so with an intent for some kind of experience or learning for their own soul. There is a sense that the success is only found in that state of ascension, and that's not necessarily true. Some beings need to die off, and it is a natural cycle of life. And while it is, there is a sadness attached to loss, there's a natural sense of loss and grief in losing something, any aspect of the universe. It's all energy, you see. And so those beings have not ceased to exist. They will decide whether or not they want to come back in some other form. And in the same way that there are stars that are dying, there are new ones being born. And so the cycle of life is something that needs to accept the idea of death as well.
Well
I
said.
have a question.
Thank you.
Out of playful curiosity, would you consider that you have a sense of humor? And if so, what makes you laugh?
Yeah. It is an essential part of being alive, is it not? To find a joy in life. And so, yes, we do feel we have a sense of humor. We like to play with the language. We like to see the irony in situations. One of the things that we have gained through this expanding awareness is the fact that we take the experiences of life in a much lighter way. Knowing that you are far more than just the physical being who's in the state of suffering most of the time tends to help you to see the humor in this state of being much more easily, and we highly recommend that. Yes. And so while our humor may not always be the same as yours, we do find that it does help us, and certainly we appreciate your own way of finding humorous in difficult times.
Nice. Thank you. We have a question from Brianna. Frank, what do you share that may deepen our understanding of what we call Christ consciousness and the entity known as Jesus? More specifically, how do these concepts pertain to our expansion or ascension?
The Christ consciousness is love consciousness. The Christ consciousness is a heart-centered energy. It is the energy of the heart. And so it is depicted as that sacred heart for the reason that it is completely heart-centered energy. And this is something that is essential to life. And you, as human beings, are witnessing the results of moving away from that aspect of yourselves. The Christ consciousness is not separate from you. It is part of who you are. It was simply embodied in this person who saw it and understood it and taught it. He wasn't singular in his understanding of it. He was simply more famous for it. And so it is not something that you need to attain. Again, it is something you, if you wish to experience it more deeply, is something you just need to connect with in yourself more often. And that is an act of conscious awareness of what you are feeling at any given moment, rather than what you are thinking at any given moment, which is what you are taught to focus on at all times in your life.
Mm.
And so being able to have that state of awareness that says, I am feeling this, I am sensing this, I am aware of something, rather than my brain is telling me a fact, is something that will bring more balance into your life. And it will honor that part of yourself, as well as honoring this miraculous part of yourself, which is the thinking mind. Bringing those two things together is what will really enhance your life. Is not focusing on one at the expense of the other. And yet that is what you've been taught to do, is to focus on the thinking mind at the expense of the feeling heart, because the feeling heart is a weakness. So it is bringing that awareness into your everyday life, not just in the moments of meditation, not just in the moments of psychic awareness, but into the very mundane aspects of your life. Bringing a higher awareness into that will help you to just live a more pleasant and beautiful life in general.
Thank you. Thank you. Cecil or Linda, do you have any final questions here?
I do, kind of on that topic of what we are kind of used to dealing with, the Christ consciousness and stuff. What is your understanding of angels and archangels?
Understand that there are many different forms of being. And those beings in an energetic state are just simply different energetic states of being, different frequencies of being, some are higher frequency than others. And yet in the realm of energetic awareness, there is no hierarchy. See, there's a tendency within the physical experience to want to place things into a hierarchy of importance. And so the lower frequencies will seem to be lower consciousness and less important than the higher frequencies, which are seen as the angelic realm and above. And yet it is not the way that it is perceived in the energetic state. It's simply different. It's not better or worse. Okay? However, the higher energy beings, the angelic realm, has a specific purpose. And that higher frequency is a very powerful one. Doesn't make it any less important or more important than any other states of being. See, so yes, there are those higher forms of presence which can influence and affect you and act as a form of guide. And there are many of those in different states of frequency. And so they will have their place. Some will step in different times in your life. And some will be giving you that subconscious cue of action that they're suggesting for you. And some will just simply be a sense of support and love. But they're all acting on your behalf. And the angelic realm is one that you can call upon when you are in need of that kind of higher frequency support.
Thank you. And I actually have a message from Archangel Michael, and he's saying, thank you so much for that beautiful expression. And he is saying, I love you.
It's mutual.
Awesome. Frank, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with us before we let you go and let Tracy come back?
We just want to express appreciation for the audience and the attention. There is a much love in this realm here with these is a collective energy that we can sense. This is why we were so eager to come forward. The sense of really wanting to be open and understanding, and the sense of connection within this group is admirable. Is something that has drawn us to your planet to begin with. You know, the incredible hearts that join you together, the love that does shine through even in the darkest times, as you've been experiencing. And we want to really emphasize that light is always greater than the darkness, and that the darkness serves its own purpose. And so in the sense of ascension, understand that Ascension is simply being in that state of love as often as possible. And that does not mean that you need to accept everything that happens. It just means that you want to extend love and understand that, to be in that place where every action is judged on how well you are expressing your heart, your compassion, your love. It will create such an amazing life experience for you. And that's what we want for all of you. And yet, the darkness has its place. And so we want to bless that as well. And we want to, let that be as it is for now, and understand that nothing ever stays in the darkness. And we send you so much love, and our own hearts surround you with healing, with growth, with appreciation. We have such an appreciation for who you are and where you live, because it is foreign to us. And we understand that as an inhabitant of this planet, you sometimes forget how amazing it is. So we hope that our viewpoint can help bring back that awareness of what an amazing experience it is to be human on this planet at this time. Even though it is quite a difficult time. Your presence here is necessary. So make the best of it. We send you much love.
Thank you, Frank. We love you.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Frank. That was more than I thought. That's more than I could have asked for. I'm just over the moon right now.
Good. Whew. It's been a while since I did that, so it's yeah.
What an honor. What's that?
I'm here. It's just
You're
I'm
here.
kind of
Yeah, you're coming back. You're coming back.
Mhm.
I get it. Well, that is okay. I feel like we can wrap it up there, because I don't know how you get better than that. That was such an honor. I just feel so honored that they decided to show up and channel on our show, because I haven't seen that in other interviews. So I just feel like we were just so blessed right there. Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad. They were showing up, and I was getting that feeling like, okay, yep, we want to come in. We want to come in. So there they are. I'm glad,
Good
because
Lord.
it's been a while. Like I said, it's been a while since I really connected with them. So I'm glad they showed up.
Me too. Oh my gosh.
Mm.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, I just said such a treat for us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Wow. Do you have, so Tracy, do you have anything coming up that you would like to share with the audience that you're doing, teaching, offering, giving?
There's always new stuff that I'm giving and teaching and all of that. So you just go to my website, which is myname.com, tracyfarquhar.com. I'm always teaching something. I'm actually, for the first time since the whole pandemic started, I'm actually starting to teach in person, which is, I'm not sure I mentioned this before, but I did mention taking psychic development classes at a community college, and I'm now teaching that class. So it's come full circle, and I'm starting that on Monday in person again, which is going to be exciting. But I still offer lots of things online, and I continually add new things to that. I have an October special on readings, and you can find that on my website just to celebrate the thinning of the veil. So yeah, just check up on there. You can sign up for my newsletter. It's just once every 2 weeks with announcements for things that I'm offering. And that's always evolving and changing. So
Tracy,
go ahead.
I was just going to ask real quick, what part of the world are you in?
Oh, I'm in New Jersey, in southern New Jersey. I'm just over the bridge from Philadelphia.
New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can tell by her thick accent that she doesn't have. Are you doing any online classes for psychic development?
I just finished one, and I'll be offering that again. I just don't have one scheduled right now. I just have the in-person class scheduled right now. But
Okay.
I continually offer. I have different kinds of workshops. I have a workshop that I created called Vibrational Awareness, which deals with one of the things that I talked about earlier, different levels of frequency that we attain.
Okay.
So I'll probably offer that sometime coming up soon. Okay.
That's awesome. Because I feel like I want to take your psychic development class, so I'll wait for you to post that.
Yeah, I have right now. This has already begun, but I started a monthly channeling group, which is really exciting. It's the first time I've done this. I had an initial workshop about channeling, and then we have a group. It's a fairly large group that meets once a month on Zoom, and we try different experiments, and then we have a time in the group where everybody channels. And we just had our second one last week, and it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. So I intend to keep that going. So the one that when this one ends, I'll start that over again. Okay.
Fantastic. Busy lady. Linda, do you want to flip us over into the Brady Bunch view? And I'll let you thank begin our closeout.
Absolutely. I just want to thank someone commented, what a beautiful group we have. And that's so true. We could not do this without you. You are, your energy and intention is what makes this group so special, in your participation. So thank you, all of our salon members that are in our Third Eye Salon online, in our Facebook group, and who join us on these podcasts. We love you so much. And please make sure that if you want more information, we've posted all of the links for Tracy below. And Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. Your energy is always uplifting and grounding at the same time. And so thank you.
Thank you.
And Tracy, thank you. This has been wonderful for me. It's been a wonderful reaffirmation of time and learning at time. And I'm so happy to hear they have a sense of humor.
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, it was great. We'll definitely be staying in touch and connecting with you. You're now part of our star family. And I just want to remind everybody to, if you haven't already, to go ahead and subscribe and to click the notification bell so that we know when we go live, because it's not always on time. We do our best, but sometimes there are tech issues we can't control. So, and then we also want to let you know that our guest next week is Claudia Edge, and Claudia Edge is an NDEer, and that's had her own amazing experiences of being on the other side and coming back and becoming a teacher. So she's friends with Susan Redvine, who we had on last week. So you want to make sure you are in the conversations around that. So please do join us. And then after that, all I really got to say is we love you. We appreciate you. And we are so grateful that you're here with us and that you're part of our family. So go live your best life, live it on your terms. And like Frank was saying, what do you want to do with your life? It's your life. What do you want to do? And to enjoy being it, and to not work so hard, but just to love more. The work is to love more. And I think that is just freaking fantastic. So with that, goodbye, everybody. We love you, and we'll see you next week.